Good evening. Welcome to episode 60 of the Brewgooders dynamic duo of beer and comics. I'm Jeff, and I'm joined by Commando Comics writer, as seen in W.H. Smith, unless you're going to the Dunfermline one to get your mate's comic, and various other establishments. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Mr. Colin Maxwell.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, number 60. I feel 60, I have to say.
It's quite amazing, man. I'm really, really proud of you. Yeah, that's amazing. And we're also going to be joined very soon by Mr. Johnny Cannon, who is a comic writer for the United. Is that right?
Artist as well. He does the whole shebang. Well, not quite, but he has teamed up with some cool people to work on his latest comic. Yeah,
amazing. So we're going to bring him on just now, and we're also going to be drinking beer. And after we've chatted to Johnny, we'll chat comics as well. Colin will chat comics because I've been really lazy and I haven't read anything that I didn't have 2000 AD in its cool. We'll bring in Johnny and then we'll chat about our beers and stuff. Yeah.
Let's go for it.
He is, Mr. Hi, Johnny.
How you doing?
Hey.
Sorry, there's my hand here, over here. I always get that wrong.
That's all right. These weird reversed video.
Yeah, I know. It's confusing me.
I watch. I do yoga on my telly, and the guy always says, "Put your left hand forward." But because of the way that they film it, when he puts when he tells you to put your left hand forward, he puts his right hand so that you mirror. Does that make sense? So he'll go put your left hand forward so that when you're watching him, you're mirroring him. And it's really confusing because then if you're not paying attention, he'll say put your right hand forward and you'll look at him and put your left. It's just weird. And
sorry, did I miss the memo? Did I miss the memo where we expanded from beer and comics into yoga? Was that a thing?
I'm really sorry.
Jeff, you're talking to the guy that was so
this is shit audio as well.
Earlier on that I had to put on a hat, so that's so yes, I do understand that.
I like that you put your hat on and then admitted to listening to the podcast when it was in audio format. That's quite as if like folk listening would be like, Johnny was a great interviewer, but you could just tell he didn't have a hat on.
Yeah, that's very true.
But the hat's got a story as well. So tell us about the hat.
You're such a bastard. It's my darkest secret. I had a Montreal Canadiens cap that I got in Montreal a few years ago, and it just was falling apart. And I don't know anything about baseball, so I bought a Detroit Tigers cap because I really liked them PI. And that's not why I grew moustaches, because I don't have a top lip, really. So, and I've got a really wonky mouth and rat teeth as well, apparently. So that's why I bought this Detroit Tigers cap, which is not as embarrassing as what
Jeff admitted
about liking the Green Bay Packers.
Green Bay Packers are the NFL's only publicly owned American football team.
That's not what you said earlier on, though, is it?
Well, I don't know.
Love of the 70s, that 70s show.
Yeah, it's Eric Foreman's favourite football team as well. So
yeah.
We had John Lees on a couple of months ago, and Colin, I can't remember what Colin admitted to, but Colin admitted to liking something as a guilty pleasure, and he got a bit of a chastisement from John because John was like, "That's just a pleasure. That's not a guilty pleasure. You shouldn't feel bad about enjoying something, unless it's like murder or."
Yeah, I was going to say, he sounds like a serial killer. That's like, you should never feel guilty about anything. That's just murdered my parents. Yeah, you really should feel guilty about a lot of things.
No, he contextualised his argument. He didn't just, but I just thought it was quite. I don't think you should feel guilty about like American on PI. It's great.
No, definitely not. Unless it's the remake.
I had a strange encounter with John Lees.
No, tell us more.
About a year ago. It was really, really strange. He was in Forbidden Planet, and I was as well. We're both buying our comics kind of next to each other. And then he was leaving the shop. I thought, I wonder if it's like he knows who I am, like I'm a famous person or that. But it's just really weird because we'd never bumped into each other at cons or anything like that. And I know Ian Laurie a little bit. I suppose like we message each other a fair bit and kind of like show each other pages of stuff we're working on, just to. I suppose it's that kind of. I'm sure you'll do this as well, Colin. Like, particularly with the art stuff, maybe more than the writing. Just as that kind of confidence booster, because you're never quite sure is this fucking shite or is this all right? But I know I was just walking out and I was like, "Are you John Lees?" And he's like, "Aye." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm Johnny Cannon." And I really then felt that I was to explain to him who I actually was, like, because he fucking wouldn't have a clue who Johnny Cannon was. But I knew Big James, so he knew about Transylvanian Nights and stuff like that. But we were walking down the road and down Buchanan Street, and it was after a while I was acutely aware that he was going to his work or something, and I was on my lunch break. I was like, I didn't quite know when to stop walking with him, so I just walked to his work with him because I didn't want it to seem rude, like I'm just completely opposite direction from where I'm going. It was a bit weird, and I think he picked up on my awkwardness, but fuck it, who cares really? Eh?
That's gold. It'll turn up in one of his stories sometime.
Yeah, the time some creepy moustache guy falling down the street, he thought I was going to try and, I don't know, molest him in an alleyway or something, which I did do, but I didn't feel guilty about it though. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm wondering, did any of these influence your comic writing at all? Any of these events? Anyway, we're here because you've been working on your epic comic, The United.
epic, yeah. Well, it feels it because it's been the new stuff has been a couple of years. And it's only 79 pages, which doesn't seem that much, but obviously with a full-time job and 2 young kids, it's getting the time to do it. And I've got a bad habit of redrawn pages I don't like, so it's not 79 pages, it's probably about 90 or something. But I've done other stuff in between then as well. And the whole thing from when I started drawing it, it's probably about 20 years, to be honest. Maybe a bit longer, because I'd draw a few pages, then leave it for like about 5 years, and then it was only really when I turned 40, I kind of just my wife had said, "Why don't you actually finish something?" So and she got me tickets for Comic-Con, so I finished it for that. And I don't know if you've had a similar experience when you kind of you're just surprised folk actually buy your stuff. You're like, all right, okay, fair enough. It's kind of it's strange, but well, you're obviously proper professional now in Commando, so there you go. And congratulations again, by the way. That's awesome.
Thank you. I guess you started about 2014. You got your books out. You know my age. That's pretty impressive. 2014, The United was released, but it was originally. I don't know if you were at that Glasgow Comic-Con actually. I don't know. I wouldn't have been selling at it, but I would have probably been visiting. Because I think I've discovered that there's a whole raft of Scottish comic creators all started making comics or releasing comics about the same time. 2013 to 2014, yeah.
All right.
Yourself, folk like Dave Cook, Big James you've mentioned, a lot of his kind of stuff was coming out then. My stuff was coming out. It's just amazing. There's loads of people all started around that point in time.
But all quite.
I think maybe Fraser Campbell's kind of that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he would have been.
I would say, was it?
When he did Sleeping Dogs, yeah.
Because the Sleeping Dogs was the one I'm thinking 2015, 2016-ish. But it's that kind of, you would have been coming through about the same time.
It was like there was a big X-Men gene just came out then that turned people into comic creators.
I wonder what happened then. It's just MCU maybe. I don't know. What's going on in 2014 that's caused people to go for it?
It was just my midlife crisis. It's turning 40 with me. Like my wife, she was like, "Well, I mean, I'd started drawing again. I'm not doing this to guilt. I stopped drinking 8 years ago and started drawing as a kind of distraction from that. And I think it's pretty common for people that have had any kind of addiction issues that they'll basically find a new addiction to do
which is why I've got this over here as well, a power tower. I work on quite a lot, as you can tell from my massive physique. Just because it is just something to distract you. So you'll get like guys that are, drug addicts, and they'll become obsessed with jogging or whatever it is. And I think quite a lot of guys have that, kind of obsessive streak in them as well, like collecting comics or playing video games or whatever it is. It seems to be a particular male trait, although that's changing, which is interesting. Certainly comics seem to be getting a bit more diverse, and that's just anecdotally from going to my comic shop. It's not just dominated by old men like me, but younger people and a lot more women going into the shop as well, which is good. I don't know if that's reflected in higher sales. It doesn't seem to be. It's just the change in demographic rather than increased. But I don't know. I didn't know that. Me, Fraser Campbell, and Ian Laurie are all from Ayrshire, and Craig Collins as well, which is weird. So me, Ian, and Fraser have spoken before that we used to go and get American comics from the John Menzies in Ayr, and it would have been at the same time because we're all kind of round about. I think Fraser's slightly older than me and Ian. But it would have been round about the same time and you'll see that occasionally in tweets, like Ian's much more of a DC fan. I was more of a Marvel fan growing up. I'm not too sure if I think Fraser's kind of both. But we all really like Captain Britain and Alan Davis's stuff. Like Ian's a huge fan of that, and I am as well. It should be pretty obvious in the United that I was a big Captain Britain fan growing up.
Yeah. For folk that haven't seen the United, I mean, I have to say, I haven't read your 200-page epic. I had actually read quite a bit of the United early on, the first maybe 2 or 3, I think. And then it was great to kind of pick up and see where it had gone. But it's a superhero team, British superhero team. We've got the Mighty Scotsman, we've got Big Cat, we've got Boudica, Britannia, Battalion, all these characters. Some of them, clearly. There's a wee bit of a Captain Britain influence in there. But tell us a wee bit more about the kind of storyline.
I was just going to write that down because I can never remember their names. That's quite it's more impressive than me. I'm not even kidding, actually. Alistair Black, that he's writing the forward to the book. He's because he'd always been a fan of United. Like, I can't remember. He must have picked up at the first Comic-Con I did, and he emailed me and said, "Oh, is it going to be in Sale in Edinburgh?" and stuff like that. And we kind of kept and got to be friends and stuff, which is great. And I had to email him, and I was like, I haven't used their real names at all because I can't remember. I can't find it in the comic, and I don't want to call them the wrong names because I couldn't remember if I'd named Big Cat, which I hadn't, like his real name, which is exclusive, Kevin. It was the feel of the comic. Originally, it was a detective story, and then I drew a giant robot in it, and it went in a completely different direction. And then years later, it morphed into something else. And those original pages, I think I've still got them. I didn't use them at all in it. So some of the artwork at the start of the United, I drew about 10, 15 years ago. The fight with the big guy, Brutus A2, the big naked guy, who's a shameless rip-off of the Hulk, but with a bald head. I'd originally posted them, I think, when I was in Miller World back in the day. And who else was on there? Mike Cooper. I don't know if you've seen Universe Gun.
Oh, right.
Yeah, his style's almost like the kind of Yellow Submarine, kind of fucking really trippy style.
Yes, you get quite a lot of people on those forums sharing their stuff and then folk critique and stuff. It's pretty good.
Yeah, Nicola Scott critiqued me.
Oh, right.
What else? I managed to piss off Warren Ellis and Ethan Van Sciver, so I was ahead of my time. That was good. There's a win. And she's really good. Yeah, what a pair of assholes, but there you go. But she was really nice, and Gabe said, you need to work in your anatomy and your figure work kind of thing, but you're nearly there. And I don't know if you're the same. When someone gives you a compliment, you just instantly don't believe them. It's
totally, completely.
Saying that to be nice, I'm absolutely shite at drawing kind of thing. But no, I mean it's. So it started off and it was that, but when I had a
suppose, a more coherent idea of where I wanted to go. It was very much a kind of love letter to Marvel UK, like 1980s stuff, and it was quite strange. A couple of years ago, I was I'd sold comics to Waterstones, and they put up one of the wee, what do we call it? The wee descriptor things that they sometimes write. It's like, oh, this is if you like Vertigo comics, like this. I was like, what? Really? Like, said, yeah, this is like a 90s Vertigo comic, and I was like, thanks. I was actually aiming for Marvel UK 1980s. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Like, you're not offending me.
It's interesting what other folk take from your work.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit weird. I mean, I think that's probably it. There's a lot of weird kind of TV references in it to like Rainbow and.
Oh, that's right. You've got the Rainbow cult gang, and you've got Aleister Crowley making a turning up, and lots of occulty kind of stuff going on. And
Aleister Crowley's Willie. That's in there.
Yep.
So
a holiday up that way. He's got a house. Isn't Crowley not got a house in like Inverness?
Yeah, Boskin House.
That's right.
My friend went up there.
Yes.
When my friend went up there, he lives in Nairn, and he was up there a couple of weeks ago, took some photographs outside the house, and security came out. They were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're just taking photographs of the house." And the guy was like, "Oh, cool, come in and take them around." And
Jimmy Page owned that house for a while in the 70s or 80s. Because he was into, I don't know if he was into sex magic, but he was into the cult and stuff like that. And it was quite interesting. But so there's a kind of cult in the United which kind of picks up on the whole Church of Thelema thing, and I put some Church of Thelema imagery in the comic. And then there's real life figures like Jonathan Ross and Margaret Thatcher. I'm not trying to equate Jonathan Ross to Margaret Thatcher. It's just they're kind of, and the Queen's in there as well until she's murdered. And but the house that they go in, where there's a portrait of Aleister Crowley and there's a kind of group of supervillains. That's actually Fawlty Towers. I thought I'll just put it in as fault. And so there's a few things like that in there as well. Like one thing I did in this was use a fair bit of reference, like of real places, because I wanted it to feel like, you know, a British comic and it looked like Britain. Except when I did Edinburgh, there's a scene in Edinburgh and just I think it's meant to be Flesher's Close. Is that the one with the really weird big long steps that go up to Coburn Street?
Flesh Market.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's got a weird name. It comes up from the station. Anyway, that one. The halfway house on it.
Flesh Market, yeah.
Aye. It's got the halfway house. It's got the halfway house on it.
And Jingling Geordies and stuff. Yeah, on that one.
Aye. And the wee door that used to go into the Scotsman building, it always stinks of pish. So that it's on those steps. Like a guy who's based in one of my best friends is getting beaten up, and I was like, fuck, I don't really want to use reference for this. It looks because it's going to be in shadow anyway, and it'll look more noirish. I want to play a bit with angles and stuff like that. So, it should have that feel in it. And then I just started putting in some weird little in jokes as well that luckily no one has even noticed. That was worth the time and effort.
But then the guys that were making Infinity War obviously noticed, because then they did one of their scenes just up from there, did they not?
I claim credit.
You get downstairs, you're talking about, you get to the wee fryer kebab shop. So.
Yeah, I also claim credit for inventing the kilt as well. That was, oh God, yeah. Oh, I'm just remembering eating kebabs in Edinburgh years ago. They were horrible memories. Yeah, that's what I would do if I was a millionaire superhero. Move to fucking Edinburgh and eat kebabs all the time. Yeah, brilliant.
It's a really awesome copy on that flight of stairs as well. That does kebabs and stuff.
Yeah, that shop's not actually there. I think it's probably some hipster bar or something.
It is something like that.
Some place, yeah. If I did,
it's a kind of, like you say, it's kind of a hipstery clothes shop, but they do have a we'll fry your kebab poster in their window now, because they recognise that's just really easy marketing. That and I don't think you can trademark a phrase like that. So they've just taken advantage of the fact that that's what their shop will forever be known as. So
yeah, I kind of Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I actually like that film or not. I think I like elements of them, but they also really annoyed me as well. But that will just end up in a 4-hour rant, so you don't want me to know about that. Not quite get the chemistry of the kind of classic 1960s, 1970s, and 80s Marvel comics. I find it quite interesting the way when they moved away from doing the, at the start they would show the comics and comic imageries, and then they moved towards showing the actors. And I thought that's, and you see that now with obviously with Chadwick Boseman, passing away at a young age, which is really tragic. He's a young guy, and I don't know if he's got a young family or a partner or whatever, but he's obviously got a family. It's terrible. But seeing, the kind of memoriam to him in the comics, and it was like, that's really interesting because, he's not produced any comics, and it's just seeing that kind of coming back down the way. Do you know what I mean? It's not all about the IP sort of providing the raw material for the films. It's the two are very much seen as the same thing now. That kind of, so it's not just a commodification of intellectual property; it's a commodification of actors now as well.
I wonder, did you see? I saw today that Spawn are going to. Yes. Their next, I think one of their upcoming covers is going to have Spawn. They're going to have I can't remember. I've not read Spawn comics in years. The name, whoever the guy, like the main cat, Spawn's like human alter ego. This upcoming cover is going to be Spawn with what looks like Chadwick Boseman's face.
Yeah, I think I can understand why with him in particular, because the film, I'll be honest, I find the film quite boring. It's like a bad Bond film in places for me, but I think it's a very important film culturally, and it means a lot as well. And it can remind me a bit of the market around Spike Lee's Malcolm X films a few years ago, that it was, it was about more than the film. It was about a sort of social cultural movement, and I think that's obviously really important. Yeah. But at the same time, I can't help but remember when Steve Ditko died. I don't remember Marvel that same feeling of loss, which is, and I'm not so sure whether the company has done such a good job of ordering guys like. I think the Kirby stuff's pretty hypocritical. I think guys like Don Heck, John Buscema, who've passed away, and it's like, Gil Kane, Gene Callan. I mean, that's where this stuff comes from. But these are guys who were repeatedly ripped off, and since I've been a bit of a dick, I might as well just throw in. I think it's pretty shameless as well that Stan Lee's put in this pedestal, and he is the person that ripped them off. And I mean, there's just no two ways about it, and took credit for their work. And I don't think he was a particularly shiny, cuddly guy. I think people forget sometimes that he wasn't fucking Mickey Mouse. He was Walt Disney, and Walt Disney wasn't a very nice person. And I think probably from a lot of accounts, I don't think Stan Lee was either. Is that a bit where you cut the transmission now? Sorry, we've lost John.
No. It's a fantastic segue into saying, well, we should talk about your collaborators, because you've got Adam Falk doing some colouring for you.
I'm just about to claim credit for all of that now as well. Actually, again, I'm trying to look like Stan Lee as well with my suspicious hairline and moustache and glasses.
Because we had Adam on the show a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I really I met Adam 2 years ago at Edinburgh, and it was the first one where I'd met. That's right, you were, because I sold nothing at that, and I was like, I'm through with comics. I'm fed up with this. And then 2 years later, I've just spent the last 2 years drawing this fucking book. But he was sitting behind us, and just when I saw his comics, I think probably the thing that people pick up on with Adam is the energy, and that kind of Kirby, kind of underground comic, kind of outlaw comic, kind of manic, like kind of steed in it. But for me, it was the kind of pop art covers as well, and the kind of retro colouring style as well. So I mean, I draw old school. And I use Photoshop really only for post production stuff. The covers in the original Run of the United are coloured as well, which is probably why they're so badly coloured. One's all right, but I don't really know what I'm. Well, I didn't then. I mean, I could do it now, but didn't really know what I was doing. But he's very, very good at it. And it's quite interesting when you're doing your intro and Colin mentioned like me kind of doing everything United, but not quite, is that for this book originally I was going to do absolutely everything I wanted to, because I wanted it to be entirely my kind of something I'd made. But then I kind of thought about it, and I've been lucky to become friends with a lot of like talented people that I respect, and also when it came to, like, for example, I mentioned earlier on Alistair Black in the forward, and just I really appreciated him, the nice things he'd said either in his reviews or just come up to me at Collins and get to know and get to be friends with him, and just thought, maybe he'll actually quite like writing a forward, and he said he was actually, he was actually, oh no, that's really cool of you, thanks for asking. So it's stuff like that. It's nice to it's nice to be part of a team, and it's very nice, particularly when it comes to things like pin-ups, seeing other people draw characters that you've created.
Totally.
So I'd asked a few other people who I don't want to say who I asked, because I think they completely forgot, and I did remind them, like, do you want to do this? And they're like, yeah, but just because obviously what's happened with the lockdown and stuff, people have had so much on, and so I've not hassled folk. But there was certainly the pin-ups that are in it are Chris Giarusso, Greg Schiegel, my friend Helen O'Neill's just done one. She's not done comic stuff before. It's really good. She's a fine artist and graphic designer. I used to work with at Falkirk before. Who else? That's really bad. James Kirkor and Ian Laurie. And they've all got different styles. So like Greg and Chris are very clean line. Chris has got that kind of Charles Schultz influence. Greg's got a kind of Mike Waringo influence, and Alan Davis as well. I've seen his figure work quite a bit, and they're both brilliant. And James and Ian are kind of that more jaggedy, nightmarish quality. Their inks are a wee bit grimier, and there's a wee bit of kind of almost like a kind of more of a natural noirishness to their kind of style. And then Helen and Jim Stewart. God, Jim's going to punch my face in now because he's about 8 feet tall. Jim Stewart just sent me one out of the blue. He's like, "Hey, do you want to put this in? I'm going to draw the Mighty Scotsman." And I was like, "All right, then." So I've drawn Ganja Man for him, which I've not actually shown him yet, or I forgot to post it until now as well. So that's a reminder. I'm going to need to do. Oh shit, I completely forgot about that. So that was really nice, and it's really cool that people will do that. I mean, yourself, if something you've come up with, if someone just randomly draws it and puts it in Twitter, it's always surprising, because I mean, the print run United the first print run was like 100 issues, and then I did a second print run 100 issues, and it's so a couple hundred folk have read it, so it's just quite surprising. It's like, who are these people?
Yeah, I've had somebody turn up cosplaying as one of my characters, which was bizarre.
Yeah, that's not happened yet. But with James and City of Lost Souls, he had someone getting a tattoo done. It's like, fucking hell. It was one of the really stronger horror images as well from City of Lost Souls as well. So when we were doing Transylvanian Nights, I was like, shit, I better draw this pretty well in case anyone gets the tattoo. Yeah, I wonder what they do from that. Probably the overhead shot of Van Helsing and all his men standing with their willies out over a dead pig.
Oh yes, that would be a good one. Yeah,
I'm gonna get that in my face. It'll be really good.
Well, everybody will remember you, that's for sure. When's it going to be out? When are you putting it on Kickstarter? Is that the plan?
Yeah, so that's going to be on Kickstarter in the next couple of weeks. Originally, I was aiming for October, but just we should be finished with the final book design So the one you've seen is just my rough version for me proofreading. And trying to cajole my wife into proofreading it, which is not done yet. So if we've riddled with typos, please do tell me.
Okay.
And Gav works on a different draft, which is like all the book design elements in it, and the actual cover, which I put up on Twitter and Instagram yesterday. And it's got all the bells and whistles and stuff in it. So the one you've got is just a pure comic itself with a holding cover, just so all the page turns are in the right order and stuff. And the double page spreads as well. So we'll probably go earlier, maybe within the next couple of weeks. James ran the Kickstarter in Transylvanian Nights. This is the first time I've actually ran one, and I'm enjoying this headache I've had for a week and just this level of stress I've gone through all the time before it's even on live. Do you know what? The way I view it is, I can't remember who said it, that they've reached a point in their comic where it's no longer, it doesn't really matter whether the comic sells nothing, because the point was to make the comic, the point was to learn from making it, and that's very much the approach I take. You know, I'm obviously not going to get rich from this book. It would be nice to make my money back and, you know, make me a little bit of money from it. That would be great. But at the same time, it was about learning to be better at making comics, and certainly that's achieved. So if I didn't make the Kickstarter goal, well, it's not the end of the world, is it? I mean, you know, I'll put it out some other way. God, I'm so fucking optimistic, haven't I?
No, you will. It'll be good.
Well,
we'll punt it. We'll be telling people about it. Don't do what Jeff did and just accidentally click the launch button.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It worked.
As well, they meant to do the preview. They meant to click the preview button or something.
Yeah, that was it. I clicked the launch now instead of, I don't know. I just misread the.
What bit of launch now did you not understand?
So it was like 60 days, which is excruciatingly long for a Kickstarter, I think. So it just about managed.
Oh, what's the guy? Is it John Tucker that just did one that was 6 days and it was just for 60 quid? See, I like the idea of that. I thought about doing that.
That's his little A6 book that he's doing, yeah.
Yeah. So my print costs. So I worked it out, like, you know, the 25% top and all that stuff. I've not factored in the price for pin-ups or paper or pens or fucking ink cartridges. I mean, because it's just, Bristol board is expensive to buy, kind of thing, but it's pretty much to cover the print run. The thing that stops me, I could go live on it just now because the book is pretty much done. The thing that I don't want to get caught out on is shipping costs, because I can't find a book with the same dimensions, because it's 228 pages but A4, so it's like I've no idea how much that weighs. So I was looking through my collection and I was like, I must have a book like that, and it's not, because A4 tends not to be the size, but it's just I wanted it to have that feel of an old British annual, and British comics when I was a kid were slightly oversized. I don't think they were A4, but they weren't far off it.
Yeah, they're just about.
Aye.
Something like the 77 comic.
I think
about that size.
Yeah, I've got that here actually somewhere.
I think the whole shipping thing, I don't know how your shipping process is, but I found, like, being in the post office when I was trying to ship my comic out, and then the lady that I went to every time asked me, she was like, how much is the contents worth? And I'm like, that's actually quite a complicated question to answer. It retails at about £4. However, you know, that's me to write, and then I've had my artist put in. She's like, just put £5.
The commission stuff, that's the one that when I've posted something, particularly to America, it's like, how much is this worth? And I was like, yeah, well, this is what they paid for it. I don't know how much it's actually worth, mind you. It depends if I get hit by a bus leaving here just now. I'll double and tell you. It's kind of, it's odd. That's another thing when I was thinking about the reward tiers for the Kickstarter. I thought about, it was Alan Henderson that kind of never talked me into it, just messaged me afterwards saying about our t-shirts are basically easier than you think in terms of shipping and cost and all that stuff, because I didn't want the hassle. And we did t-shirts on Transylvanian Nights, and I don't think we actually sold that many of them, but we only did t-shirts in that because I liked the design of the cover, and I was like, I'd quite like a t-shirt of that. Can we put that in a Kickstarter? And it was the same with this, the design for this one, when I was design it, I thought I'll do. I don't know if you've actually seen this. That's the original cover. Hold on a second. I need to put it in front of my face. So that was, and originally it was going to be a wraparound, but that's now the inside cover for the end papers and a double page spread. But I then went for the other one because I thought, well, that actually could make quite a nice T-shirt design. So the question you asked was about Adam Falk colouring. And then I went off for about 8 hours talking about something else, which always happens.
That's all right. Jeff's good at that too, so don't worry about it.
He's very good at colouring.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Is it Billy Connolly? Oh, here I go already. Billy Connolly says like somebody was like Billy Connolly's really good at like writing these big long stories that will meander for hours, but he'll always come back to the main point.
Yeah, and he's funny, which I'm not. So
I did hear him say he was like, "That's not true. Sometimes I'll meander and I'll never come back." He's like, "I've got stories that I started in comedy shows in 1984, and I've never come back to them."
yeah, that's definitely like, I'm really bad for that as well. I walk into rooms at work. Well, obviously I don't just now, but I used to when I was allowed to go into my work. Used to walk into rooms and then I'd just completely forget why I'd get in there, and like people just get used to it. Like, I don't know. It's just I've been hit in the head a lot in my life. Probably just caught up in me, punched in the face far too many times. It's quite worrying actually when I think about it. But then I forget almost immediately, having been punched in the face so many times. It's good from that point of view. So I know Adam Falk's really good, and the other folk that are working on it and are great as well. And Gav Boyle, who did the kind of graphic design on Transylvanian Nights, and he did for Portal, which I really it pretty much flopped, which is disappointing. I've still got quite a lot of copies of them in here. I'm looking over there because there's a pile over there, bottom of the garage, keeping the draft out unsuccessfully. That is my comics. They were good for something. But I love his design stuff. He's just got. I mean, he has a graphic design in his day job now, he's just much better at it than I am. I chip in with ideas, and he'll do the usual thing. What do you want it to look like? And but he came up with some elements for this book around the design incorporating the Union Jack. And I was laughing when we were talking. I was like, the really funny thing is I fucking hate the Union Jack. Yeah. I hate what it stands for. Probably I'm really sick. Slag off Stan Lee, piss off any conservatives or unionists as well.
You're a Captain Britain fan, but you hate the Union Jack as well. I know there's a.
Well, that's the funny thing. It's the same, but it's the same with when I got old. When I was a kid, every Christmas I used to love watching the Sean Connery James Bond films. I was speaking about this with Tony Esmond recently, and then it's only when I was an adult I realised the guy's a racist, the guy's a colonialist, he's obsessed with the British Empire, he's a rapist, he's a murderer, and he's a horribly unpleasant character. But at the same time, you're not really thinking about that when you're a kid. It's like, oh, he's really cool. Look, he just jumped off that fucking plane. That's amazing. He's really good at fighting. Look at his hairy chest. That's awesome. It's stuff like that. You take it at face value. I think one of the things I really liked about the Jamie Delano and Alan Davis run of Captain Britain was that they did start thinking about that, and so Betsy would pick him up and been pompous, and I don't just like his writing, but I love listening to Pat Mills when he's talking about stuff as well. And I think the importance he puts in class in comics, and certainly that's something I tried to put in the United. There's no one in there, with a couple of exceptions. Pardon me. Sorry, I just had my dinner before this in case I vomit all over the laptop. My moustache should catch most of it. And then I'll eat it later on. I'll suck it out the hair.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. It was trying to capture that kind of bit of class in there as well. Big cat Scotsmen that they are, or they should be, obviously working class. And there's that again. It's that kind of off kilter feeling there as well. The slight weirdness I think you get with a lot of British comics or a lot of British TV, and kind of our popular culture. It's always been weird. It's really, I mean, we were talking about Rainbow earlier on, and there's a character in there it's not based in Zippy, it just rips off Zippy blatantly, and is called Zippy at one point as well. I'm really going to get sued for that. Luckily, hardly anyone buys these things, so that's quite good. It's trying to capture some of that, and just like I said, it was a homage to Marvel UK, and also just a recognition how strange the sort of culture certainly I grew up in, and that was something I tried to do. There's a series of flashbacks through United because it's still a fragmented narrative, partly because that's the way my sentences work. You probably noticed.
Yeah.
You can re-edit this so that it actually makes sense. You'll be able to put my sentences in the correct order. It was to kind of do that, and just also to stop me from getting bored when I was drawing it, which is something that can happen quite a lot, particularly if you don't work off a script like me. Just do it out straight your head. It's the best way to do it.
I've tried that. Yeah.
How did you find it?
Really difficult just doing it out of my head.
Did you do it like kind of automatic writing, or do you do thumbnails, or?
I'd try every technique, I think, when it comes to drawing.
Right.
I have just like, right, I've got a picture in my head, I'll just try and recreate that. Then other times, in fact, some of the historical comics, I just think of, there's something that has to be in it. I'll just draw a picture of that. Here's a submarine in the water. Here's another picture of a plane flying overhead. That has to be in the story somewhere. And then I just have all these disparate things and then just put them in order to make a story.
I'll use a prop for this. I brought this through just in case. So it's a massive dildo. It's not really. So hold on a second. No, it's just average size. If it's pages, I did. Hold on, where is it? I can't remember the order of this book now. It's actually finished drawing it about 2-3 weeks ago. Hold on a minute. So there's a bit I wanted to do. It was a kind of, after doing it, I felt that there wasn't enough of one of the characters in it. I just wanted more of them in it, so I went back and added an extra couple of pages. Where the fuck is it? That's really weird. Maybe I didn't put it in. And I wanted to draw, it's like you said about something, I wanted to draw more helicopters, and then there was bits where I wanted to draw tanks and stuff. So I wanted to basically draw military vehicles and stuff like that, because I wanted to do war comics at some point. I don't mean professional, I mean I just want to draw like war comic stuff, and I wanted to see if I was any good at doing it and stuff. And things like drawing a tank is easy because there's plenty of reference stuff in the internet and stuff now, but it's not so easy if you want to draw someone throwing a tank or someone getting hit in the face with a tank, because obviously you're not lying underneath a tank. I have no idea what the underside of a tank looks like.
No.
So here's the page here. So that was one of the pages. That was one of the pages. Can you see that without the glare, or shall we take it out the thing?
Sorry, I took us off the feed so that we could see it, and then you asked us a question.
Aye. So no, I was actually just saying, can you see this?
Yes, we did see it.
So it was just basically to draw helicopters and stuff like that, and then the way that I designed the scene was he's basically fighting. I'm sure you can see like a kind of English Defence League kind of style. He looks alarmingly like you, Colin. Actually, I hadn't really noticed before. I'm only joking. It's the muscles. It's the way that he leaves his shirts open with his massive.
That's me. Yeah.
And there's my kind of Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 4, Hadouken style thing.
Yes.
Put in there as well, just as a kind of a nod. So it's stuff like that, like thinking about, well, that's an idea for a cool scene. How do I get from that to that to that? And then I do that sometimes, and other times I'll work backwards to get to a logical conclusion and stuff like that. And basically, it's just a big jigsaw puzzle that you fit together, and sometimes I'll change the order of pages and stuff. It works pretty well. I mean, there's an interview in the back of the book with me. We kind of did it as a round robin panel thing by email with me, Chris Giarusso, and Greg Schiegel. And Greg in particular was absolutely appalled with the way I work. I think Tony Esmond, he just laughs whenever I tell him about it. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" But why would I write a letter to myself? I'm drawing. I mean, that's what a script is in a comic. It's a letter from the writer to the artist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm both. I don't need to do that. It's a complete waste of time.
Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah.
So it's just, all you have to do is have the clarity of thought, and mine is inefficient because I'll sometimes do thumbnails just to nail it down, like the storytelling aspect of it, figure out how many pages roughly I'm talking about, and then I'll draw out my roughs, and my roughs tend to be pretty tight, and then I'll just use my light table to put them in the page. Now, a lot of people don't like doing that because they say, "Oh, you lose the energy and stuff like that." What I've also done was, and this comes up in the interview in it as well, Greg's absolutely appalled because I say that I go straight to inks. He's like, "Oh, that's really lazy," or that's overconfident or arrogant. It's like, no. I'm still penciling because I'm just inking off my pencils using my light table. I'm just not penciling it twice, which is just stupid. Why would you pencil twice? And it's just so that the reason why I do that is so I can make changes on the page. It's just because I don't know if you did this as well. When I started making my own comics, I drew in cartridge paper, and if I tried to rub anything out, the paper would just get torn up.
Yeah.
Or when you would just get that kind of ghostly image of all your original pencils. Mm-hmm. It's horrible to draw on. At first, I couldn't really draw on Bristol board though because it was too smooth. Mm-hmm. I didn't really have much of a tooth to it. But now I've got used to it. Oops, pardon me. That was quite nice. That was some pesto coming back up.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm like a bird. I need to be good. Where's my child so I can spit it into their face and they can eat it for their dinner? They've all got moustaches as well though, so it's fun. Yeah,
take after you. That's nice.
Yeah. It's a straightforward way of working, except when it's not. But writing a script's not easy either because you still start with a blank bit of paper, and it depends, if you're writing for yourself or if you're writing for someone else. It just depends who the way that you want your collaborator wants to collaborate with you. So I don't know. You've done both though. I mean, so how does it work? What's your experiences of doing it when you've written something like we use? I mean, how does it work?
When I've written something and given it to somebody else. You mean?
Or when you're doing it for yourself, like is there any difference at all, or to change?
Oh, very much so. I mean, yeah, like you say, if I don't tend to kind of write a complete script if I'm drawing it myself. I have kind of just the main kind of points, and then I think about kind of what scenes I need, and just draw them, but never in any kind of not in chronological order. I'll just do the bits. Well, I fancy doing that today. I feel like I'm confident about drawing, an aeroplane today, so I'll do that. And then I'll piece it together later on. But writing a script for somebody, to do it tends to be just have to be quite detailed in things. And I do tend to be quite detailed. I mean, I've seen lots of different scripts. John Wagner's scripts are like, Mega City 1, and that's what it says. All right, okay. But my scripts sometimes will be quite detailed depending on what I need. And then, so it was weird doing the Commando because I never saw really I never had any interaction with the artist at all.
Right, really? Oh.
So it was just send the script off. Didn't even know who the artist was until May, and it was only because I got sent a few pictures. They didn't tell me who it was, but it's just because I recognised who it was. So no interaction whatsoever. But then it came back and it was like, fucking hell, this is amazing. It was like he was reading my mind.
Yeah, that's. I've only written for someone else once in a 2-page comic called Alfie Special Socks about based in Billy's Boots, except he finds an old pair of wank socks from the 1940s, and they're so stinking that people won't get in the football pitch. He thinks they give them magic powers. That's just they don't. They just smell so bad. No one will be near them. And every episode was meant to be his mum just trying to wash them because they're just. It's like 40 years worth of rank semen.
I've got it. I want that comic. I want that.
It's Gav boiled through it. It's we never published it anywhere. It's all.
Oh God! Next time I do an anthology, I want it.
I honestly think it's the best thing I've ever written. It makes me laugh every time I read it.
Gross out stories anthology. That would be awesome.
I wrote a second script for it where they're playing in a five-a-side tournament. And someone hits a shot and skies it so bad that it hits a satellite, and the satellite falls in the pitch and kills everyone opposite team. So they're awarded the match and stuff. And the people they're playing are all Shakespearean actors, so they're all dressed up as guardians for some reason. It was like absolutely. Just the way that we did it was like. So I said, Gav, like, do you want to do this thing? He's like, what is it? I said, well, it's this comp, but it's based in Billy's Boots, but it never makes any sense. It's like, so there's a bit in the first episode where his mum's put the socks in the washing machine. Instead of opening the door to him out, he fucking kicks a hole in the window and the cuts his foot open. It's just like, why did I fucking just open the doors?
Oh boy!
It makes me laugh. That's important. The way he draws it's so funny.
I just need to see this.
It's really bad, but it's so bad it's good. Hopefully, but what's really funny about it is it was based in Two Friends, and it was originally called Ali's Special Socks after one of my friend Ali who had stinking feet, and then there was my other mate Alfie who wouldn't shower after a game of football, so he'd come to the pub and he'd be stinking, and he'd always be like, he'd always try and hug me, and I was like, Alfie, you're stinking, honestly, you're humming, fuck off, you're reeking, so stop trying to grab me all the time. And so it was based on a combination of them, but we had to rename it Alfie's Special Socks, because Ali, it emerged, was a paedophile. Like, he was one of my best men, and we found out he'd been trying to groom a 13-year-old girl online, but it turned out it was a policeman. I'm not making this up. And so, like, oh, fuck, we better rename this, because... But weirdly, Gav, I'd never sent him any photo reference. I'd just described him, and he drew Alfie exactly like. I mean, it looks just like him. And Alfie was really offended by this as well, which made me love it even more. So it's just like, please, Alfie, if you're watching this just now, please fucking go for a shower after football because it's stinking. I really don't like it. We shared a flat for a while, and it's really funny because I remember he walked into me once, like the lock on our toilet door was probably walked into me once I was doing a job. And every time he gets drunk, he brings this up to everyone. I was like, I've got to shut up about that. It's a personal moment that I've just told everyone about.
So, Jeff, do you have any questions to ask?
So that's why Adam Falk coloured the front cover.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, that's the best Adam Falk story I've heard.
Yeah,
it started 29 minutes ago.
That was awesome.
You're right. So, if people are interested in finding out all about you and want to,
they already know everything about me now.
They know everything now, yeah.
other than your toilet habits and smelly friends. Where can folk check you out? Where can folk check out your work?
Alfie put the photographs of me in the toilet and his Flickr stream, so there's that. No, there's I'm on Instagram as CannonHill_comics, and I'm in Facebook as Johnny Cannon, but there's an H in Johnny, which has led to much confusion from some people. And Facebook. Hang on a minute. I'm on Twitter.
There's no F in Cannon either.
Yeah, there's no F in Cannon. That's right. What the fuck is? I forgot to ask at the start. Am I allowed to swear in your?
Yeah,
I hold record for the first episode, about 20 minutes in.
I think I called it. I was like, oh, that's what kind of podcast we're going to be because you've just dropped an F.
All right, comics. So it's at Cannon Hill Comic on Twitter. so professional. It's amazing. I can't understand why I never get picked up by a company. This fucking guy doesn't even know his own name. Why does he keep on talking about doing jobbies all the time? Ask him a question about his book that he's trying to sell. He's not mentioned it once.
Yeah.
His mate's stinking masturbation stops.
It's the best stories.
I've got your big cartel. I've got your big cartel address here.
Oh, you do? Can you tell me and I'll put it on my phone?
You're part of the cartel.
Well, someone's just messaged me as well. That's exciting. Someone's actually just bought one of my comics.
Oh, it was me. Sorry.
Oh, was it? Oh, there you go.
I was when you were talking about it earlier. I was reading the blurb and I was like, I'm just going to buy it.
You're supposed to do your research before the show, though.
No,
not halfway through it. I could just hold it up and you could read it.
I wanted to look at some of the pictures for reference as you were chatting, and I was like, oh, that's actually a good price. So I was just clicking buy it.
It's like, damn it, why doesn't it? You should go on Instagram because most of it's on there for free. You're not getting that £2 back now. You fucker. No, it's what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Adam Falk. Adam Falk, he's a good guy. He's done a really good job in the cover. It was. I really liked it. I'm being serious now. It just sounds so insincere. No, I think he's really good, and I think there's some people. It's interesting you getting that commando gig because there are people who, either in writing or drawing and stuff, it's you can see their kind of trajectory and their growth and what they're doing, and you think, there's some. I'd rather not say who because I don't want to piss anyone off if I don't mention their name. But there's some people you can think, right, their style, you can see that they'd be good. Maybe maybe they're 2 years away from doing something for 2000 AD or something like that. It's obvious. It's just whether they want to do that or not. And I think the biggest thing is whether they actually get time to do it. There's quite a few people just now are thinking, God, that really is repeating in me. There's a lot of really, really talented people in small press, and calling it small press is almost misleading now, because if you look at the size of diminishing print runs in professional comics and the increasing print runs through Kickstarter for some of the small press titles, it's just indie comics. I think pretty much what you're seeing just now, the underground scene in British comics, you still got that punky vibe that maybe 2000 AD mainstreamed. That's definitely there, and it's quite interesting seeing the kind of, I'm not suggesting I'm anywhere near that level, but the growth in, like, I did this to improve my craft at drawing and storytelling more than anything else, and I can see that, which makes me happy, because there's always the point where, that point of no return where you're just like, it's all fucking shite. I can't believe I drew that. That's absolute garbage. And then you want to redraw it. And certainly doing a book that some pages I'd drawn like a number of years ago, I really had that looking at this, and I was like, fuck that. I'm not fucking printing that. There's one page in it, for example, that it's a straight swipe from a film still. I can't remember what the name of the film is. Plunkett McLean, and it's a character, the highwayman, and I was looking at a picture of a pistol just to get the angle right, to get the foreshortening, and I ran out of time to finish it, and just, this fucking design's pretty good, so I just copied the still, and it still bugs me to the point I thought about redrawing it. I was like, well, am I then going to go in and redraw stuff that, that arse looks rubbish, I'll just redraw that arse, and then before you know it, I've redrawn the entire thing. I quite like that that transition from, like, I know that I've gotten better, and that I quite like that annoys me, or that, for example, I've used just a shite angle, or my storytelling's not quite right, or the writing's a bit clunky, the dialogue's a bit clunky. Again, it's about that, you getting better. It's almost a record for yourself. And the thing that reassured me was seeing the Captain Britain Panini collections, and seeing Alan Davis's, going from being, pretty much small press, and equivalent to small press now, to someone who's just ridiculously one of the best comic artists out there within a very, very short period of, it's not a short period of time, because he's done a lot of work at DC and stuff, like over a couple of years. And the difference is that that's fast track because you're doing it every day, 10 hours a day. Whereas people like ourselves, that growth is spread out over years because you just don't get the time to do it, and because you don't have the energy to do it because you need to take a break sometime. Working in this at times, it's felt like 2 jobs. I did it over 2 years because in Transylvania Nights, I did get burnt out doing that because I don't know if he did it on purpose. James put the Kickstarter live when I was still penciling it. And I was like, I fucking ink all this. And it was like 40 pages or something. And it was all inked in the life of the Kickstarter. And I hadn't finished penciling it. And I was just like, fuck me, what? And he didn't even tell me, he just did it. I was like, bastard. I was really, really angry about it as well. Fucking hell, like it's. But again, it was good because it meant that it gave me a kick up the arse to finish it. It's just it meant that I was up until 3 a.m. fucking drawing and stuff. But that's what I'll do next after. I'm really looking forward. I've actually drawn quite a lot of that second issue, about 10 or 12 pages.
Oh, cool. That's good to know. I've been wondering about that when it was going to start to appear. But that'll be another podcast. That'll be we'll get you and James together.
No, it'll be the same one. It's just you won't have got rid of me, and he'll just join us in 2 weeks' time.
You'll just be in the background. Yeah,
I'll still be talking. And you're like, does he ever sharpen? And answer's no.
I've been next to you at a Comic Con, I know.
It's really, really hyper, and it's handy for drawing and stuff like that. But it also means that when I'm drawing, I talk to myself quite a lot as well.
That's not unusual.
Do you do the voices of your characters?
Oh, aye. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do your commando voice then. I demand to hear it.
I have a French character.
Really? Do you do your French character?
Yeah. So he says, I remember this word I learned in French at school, which was boff, and it's just
boff.
like displeasure about boff. So I had a boff in there.
Did you guys have, Jeff? I'm just going to say this. I mean, you're an attractive man, but you do look younger than me and Colin. So I'm assuming that you are. Did you have Tour de France when you were doing French at school?
Is that the picture?
It's a wee guy,
no.
Thierry, and it was like here's Thierry, and it was like, why is Thierry in the shower in most of these books? It's really quite strange. It's like, but Thierry, the tapes that I had was like Thierry, the really high pitched voice.
That's right.
That's the way I imagine your French commando to speak, Colin.
Oh, right. You can imagine. That's fine. Yeah.
If there's an audiobook version of this,
he was quite a deep voice, but yeah, Thierry, could you Thierry if you want. Yeah.
Thierry's dad, Thierry. I don't know any other Thierry, off.
That's
it's aggressive.
That's taking me back to my high school days, and oh god, French.
During high school French, spending years, maybe 3 years, learning all these French things, and then watching a documentary or like a video of where it was a guy going to France for the weekend, and like. First thing he notes, he goes to France on like an exchange thing for the weekend, and the first thing he notes is the French he learned in school is entirely useless. I remember this, like, and this is part of this educational video where he's like, you basically in high school you learn kind of broad Parisian French, and then he goes for the weekend in South France, and he does his like bonjour. Je m'appelle Alex, blah, blah, blah. And they're all like, what? And they don't know what he's talking about. And then somebody, his French teacher, she kind of pops up as like, and like little bubbles around his head whenever he gets confused to give him the French. And she brings the French lesson aspect of this program. And she verifies it. She's like, people in the south of France don't talk like the people in Paris. And he's like, I remember sitting there going, why are we learning this? It's not going to be useful when you're in France.
We went on a school trip to France, and I remember when we went to Normandy, like our teacher said, right, don't leave your dorms at night because there's packs of wild dogs. And And we were like, oh, yeah, right, okay. So we all, like, as soon as like the lights were off, we were all out our dorm thing. And then we just noticed these like fucking 30 dogs just walking around through there. Like, they weren't kidding. And like these mangy, insane looking dogs, wild dogs. It's like, has no one ever thought of putting a fence up? I mean, what on earth? And we're all like absolutely shitting our pants because we're like, let us back in. We're like, and I can't, God only knows, some sensible folk wouldn't let us. Oh yeah, right. We're like, no, honestly, there's a pack of wild dogs like coming. And it was really, really bad. It's like you could hear teachers like the next morning. I had to sit with the teachers because I was always getting into trouble, so they made me have breakfast with them. I wasn't allowed to sit with anyone else because I just talked too much. And then they were like, they're like, oh, did you hear those folk out last night like trapped out with the wild dogs? Like, why would you do that? Why would you take teenagers somewhere surrounded by wild, rabid dogs? That made me the man I am today. So
clearly, yeah.
All the rabies I've got. It's not something
You've been bitten, weren't you?
I'm going to do a comic adaptation.
It's everything.
It's going to be my next big thing. Fuck Transylvanian Nights.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Tyrion's aggressive father. Tyrion. I don't like to say do the dishes in French. It's something to say.
My wife wants to point out that my wife, who's in the next room, wants to point out that the textbook from high school French was called Tricolour.
Tricolour?
Tricolour.
All right.
Yeah. That's the name of the French flag, I think, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. The Tricolour's also an obscure Spider-Man villain covered in treacle from the 1970s as well. It's too sticky.
In a very first episode, I wanted to do one of the things I wanted to, and I actually got bored and never did it again. I wanted to insert random quizzes for Colin to try and guess. And one of the ones I did was I'm going to give you the name of 3 Spider-Man baddies, and you have to tell me which one I've made up. And that would have been perfect for that round. Arm fall off man one, where he actually the guy's arm fell off and then he lifted it and used it as a club.
Really?
Yeah. I need to find this guy. I basically made a random guy up and called King Carpet, and Colin assumed that he was like genuine.
Yeah, because Batman's got Condiment King.
He does. He does.
Kite Man. The famous one for Spider-Man that was a kind of low benchmark was the Ditko one, the Looter. And I think it was meant to be originally called the Meteor Man or something because he gets his power from a meteor. But I don't know. I quite like some of the lame 70s ones. I've got a genuine fondness for Rocket Racer. And one of my favourite Captain America comics is I think it's issue 300. I'm looking over there because it's down there. It's issue 310 and it's Blue Streak. I fucking love that. I love that comic. And I love that redesign. I'm assuming it was Paul Neary that did it. I think it's excellent. But there's also Gamecock, who's just... I'm really childish. It just makes me laugh. He is dressed like a giant rooster, and he's called Gamecock. But it's. I don't know. I mean, you can't hit a winner every time, and I think that the thing that makes, it's all relative. Characters in the Marvel universe really stand out is the shite. I mean, I think going back to slagging off Stan Lee again. The reality is they come up with thousands of characters, and most of them aren't very good.
But I don't know how they're going to play it, but certainly, what was it, DC Fandom? Is that what it's called? The thing that came out a couple of months ago. When they released the Suicide Squad one, the one that James Gunn's doing, and it looks like they've let him run away with the. Like, obviously, they sort of the Guardians of the Galaxy inspired madness with regards to the Suicide Squad. So a lot of the characters that are going to be in the new sort of run of Suicide Squad members are guys like Polka Dot Man. It does look like James Gunn has, or whoever's in charge of the writing, I assume he's got part of that. But they've gone and looked for really obscure, very lame bad guys.
But they have to do that for Suicide Squad because, I mean, the point of Suicide Squad was that they died at some point. They were expendable. So, I mean, with IP for films, because each character is so potentially valuable. If like, I mean, for example, Guardians of the Galaxy was a big hit, and probably a lot of folk were probably quite surprised. Iron Man was a big hit, and probably a lot of folk were surprised by that. Or Blade, you know what I mean? Like they weren't like supposedly top tier characters. You never know what's gonna connect with an audience. So if you've killed off your most popular character, then you're kind of fucked. I mean, I suppose that the equivalent is like Boba Fett and Star Wars. You're then at the point of, is that character really good because the audience has had to use their imagination to fill in the blanks? They've made him cooler than he actually was because there's not really a backstory. It's a blank canvas almost. He just has a cool look, and then he pretty much died. He doesn't. I mean, the only thing's Boba Fett. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, so I'm probably going to get this wrong. But the only thing I remember him doing is winding up Darth Vader, hiding in a Star Destroyer in the shadow, and then basically being incompetent and falling into a giant fanny with teeth and dying, and that's or bumhole, whatever it's meant to be, and that's pretty much it. But he still is an immensely cool character and stuff, But then they got round that with the Mandalorian. It's like they make an entire sort of culture and mythology out of a pretty cool helmet, which looks a bit like an knob. So it is pretty weird. I mean, it's funny where things go. So the polka dot mans of the world, it might resonate. Do you know what I mean? And part of it is the tongue-in-cheek thing. I really like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I mean, I think at the end when they have the dance off and stuff, I found that a little bit painful. I was maybe going a bit too far. It's just like you're trying too hard here. And then the second one, it was I realised the pot calling the kettle black, but it did seem a bit too freewheeling. maybe could have done with a tighter script. They just don't make it up. Oh God, what have I done?
Just film
so I mean, you can't just take the kitchen sink approach to things. You've got to have it tight. You've got to define it down, irrespective of how you got there. You've got to be judicious and making sure that you're not going off in massive tangents all the time. Again, I do appreciate knowing my conversation skills. That's exactly what I spend 90% of my life doing, going off in tangents.
I think with Guardians of the Galaxy 2 in particular, they'd created an animal. Like they'd become victims of their own success. So I think that I totally agree with what you're saying with Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but I do feel like that freewheeling nature were born of necessity, because they were like, folk like to Drax's deadpan delivery where he says really offensive, horrible things to people. But with genuine, he's not doing it to offend. Like this sounds like many right-wing politicians, but like, when he tells
he's got a heart of gold. That's the difference.
He tells Magnus that she's horrifying to look at and really ugly, but he's not doing it to hurt her feelings. He's just he's trying to make a point about inner beauty. It's like,
It's much the same way I proposed to my wife, really.
I'm just thinking he's the kind of, he's just like the average guy who just can't see what's in his heart and just comes out shit.
I think it's, I mean, that kind of wackiness, I suppose, became the unique selling point of that kind of film franchise, I suppose, really, which is why he was so valuable to it that they let him have that cooling off period after his kind of. It's ridiculous. The guy made a fucking off-color joke in Twitter like a few years ago. I mean, so fucking what? I mean, big deal. I mean, grow up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, the guy's, it's just ridiculous. So, excuse me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd never thought I'd be at the point where, I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch, probably as an early teenager, I used to get quite excited when Muppet Babies come on a Saturday morning because Spider-Man used to crawl over the Marvel logo. And I was like, oh, look at that Spider-Man. That's the only Spider-Man you ever saw on TV. But it's everywhere. Oh, God, everywhere. I'm going to get a big rant.
It's amazing.
I've not seen, like,
Batman versus Superman or Justice League. I don't care about the Snyder Cut. They look miserable. It looks like a bunch of guys my age in steroids running about punching each other. It doesn't look particularly interesting. I think the Marvel films are, some of them are entertaining, but it's like watching a Scooby-Doo episode. It's very much A, B, C, D. You know, if you're watching this, I mean, you know that the actor's going to reach such a level of popularity. You know, it's pretty much like there's going to be a damsel in distress. He's going to take his mask off at some point. He's going to run about like that for a bit. And it's losing a lot of the core elements of what those characters are about. You know, the secret identity, I suppose the comics code, enforced morality of Marvel comics as well. A lot of the characters in Marvel films are not characters I recognise. They're soldiers. They're not heroes. Do you know what I mean? They don't save people. They shoot people. It's you know, it's much more like a Mark Miller comic than a Stan Lee comic to me. And you know, a lot of people clearly like that. And I have enjoyed the films, but watching them again and thinking, particularly young kids, I think the only Marvel films my kids have seen are Spider-Man, Homecoming, Far From Home, Ant-Man, and that's pretty much, and maybe Thor. Those were the only ones, because the rest are just too violent. Into the Spider-Verse, that film was so good. That's unbelievable. It is a comic though. I mean, it's incredible. It's oh god, I think that's the best. If people say, "Oh, what's the best Marvel film?" It's not a Marvel film. I would agree. Into the Spider-Verse by a mile. It's got the best script. It's got the best art direction. It's phenomenal, and it's nuts, and it works. It's just brilliant. You literally don't know what's going to happen.
I've got much of the soundtrack on my running playlist.
Aye, I do too. Except I don't run. I do lots in my power.
In
many ways, I've just got it in my Spotify playlist.
The whole leap of faith sequence is absolutely stunning. Where they I really particularly love the bit where he's sort of flying up through an alleyway and he shouts like "woo" just because he's totally enjoying himself, and the alley shakes and the word follows him as he's swinging. I'm like, that's quality.
Yeah, it's like the Will Eisner or Alex Toth used to do that a lot. In fact, Alex Toth more than Will Eisner, because Will Eisner would do like build the titles into the. Alex Toth was brilliant at showing the kind of onomatopoeia, like the kind of flow of it, showing movement. Like he did that in. Is it Bravo for Adventure? He did it a lot, but he would also do it with sirens and stuff and laughs as well, filling panels with laughs. It's just, he's, oh god, Alex Toth is. I did a podcast with Tony Esmond and Russell Mark Olsen a couple of months ago. It's probably about 6 months ago now. Actually, Jesus. And then it was about Alex Toth, and I'd read Alex Toth stuff and seen it, and I was like, oh yeah, he's really good. But then getting back over, I was like, holy fuck, he's fucking unbelievable. And it's just that to me that's the feeling I got out of Into the Spider-Verse. Is you're seeing something that's like, holy fuck, how the fuck would I draw that? And you're trying to figure it out. So, and that's the kind of comics I like now, where you know, I was speaking about this recently. It's like I'd read less and less for enjoyment, and actually put off reading comics now because I find it quite hard. Because the more time you spend making comics, the more time you try and you'll just subconsciously start analysing them. Like, how do I do this? Oh, that's quite cool the way they've done. Right, they've done that perspective trick there.
Yeah, it spoils the story for you.
It does. It's like when we were kids. Again, I'm talking about me and Colin here because you look like a 12-year-old with a beard. A really good-looking 12-year-old with a beard. That came out wrong. I can't stress enough I don't find 12-year-old boys attractive, but still, even when they do have beards, and are good at funning. Is that kind of? I completely forgot what I was talking about there. Alex Toth. No, it wasn't Alex Toth. We've moved on.
You never actually started.
Weird off now. My headache's coming back. That's the problem here. I don't even drink. I don't have an excuse. So
that's a big part of our podcast. So it's
Yeah, neither of you drank until we started speaking to me. I've driven you to it. But I know it's like figuring that out and stuff like that, and it gets to be you can kind of put it off and stuff like that. There's a few things that I'll read for enjoyment now, but a lot of time, particularly the better the comic artist is, I will spend time just. I don't even realise I've stopped reading it and just started looking at it too much.
Mm-hmm.
I think today I was looking at the the 10 of Swords thing, creation, and Pepe Larraz's artwork, and I was like, God, he's really good. I was kind of looking at that, and I was just like, I find Jonathan Hickman quite hard to follow. Maybe I'm just really stupid. I don't know, but it's like, what is this? Seems what? I don't know what's happening here. Is this seems like really intelligent gobbledygook, like really well made gobbledygook. It's like a Transformers film, is pish, but it's really, really well made pish, which is the level I aspire to with the United. Oh, this is shite, but it's pretty well made shite. But I'm not saying John Hickman was shite. Far from it. It's just I genuinely didn't understand it, and I don't know if that's because there's a change in comics have obviously become more complex. Probably since the 80s with Alan Moore and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's now harder to read them, I think, in monthly format, particularly if they're late.
Very briefly last week, that often when we kind of first started the podcast, we tend to cover quite a lot of number ones. We do.
Is that one of those dogs from France? It's followed you over.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about a lot of our. She's just having a wee freak out there. Sorry.
If her lips go blue, she probably has COVID-19. I don't think dogs have lips, so that would be more disconcerting.
My wife just came by and she glanced at the screen. She says, "Is Jeff wearing his Flash outfit? Because that's what he wears when he's out doing his running. He's Flash.
I wear my lockdown
superhero outfit."
Superhero hoodie. We cover a lot of number ones. I think just because you can introduce them to a story, and what we've noticed, I don't know if this is just because we read loads of comics and we have to review them for podcasts and stuff. It gets really, really hard to when you've got loads of stuff coming in. It gets really, really hard to work out what's going on. So you end up collecting 3 or 4 before you even start the story.
The kind of decompression, that's become the thing as well. Something that would happen in a panel happens over 6 issues, and there obviously is a skill to it and stuff, but I think change your marketing model. Why are you publishing monthly comics if that's what you're going for? Just release an original graphic novel. Just do that, because you're not growing your market over the long term. You're losing readers over the long term of that because they'll just get pissed off. There's nothing really to it. Comics are expensive, and they're getting shorter as well. I mean, they're back down to, I know there were 17 pages probably when I started reading them in the 70s, American comics, and they're now 20. But when I was reading them in the 70s, they were 10p, and now they're fucking Christ. What are Marvel comics now? About £5 or something like that. £4. It's taking the piss. And printing hasn't particularly got dearer. I think that's a myth. And certainly if you look at page rates and lack of incentive programs now as well, because of the sales and the distribution models have changed, it's certainly not been shared with the creators. I don't know if when you were younger, you both had dreams of drawing for Marvel or DC, or clearly obviously the Commando thing's been one of your things, Colin, but just when you actually find out about the economics of comics, it's just it takes the piss. It really does. And there's a reason why people broke off and formed Image. There's a reason why if you hear Todd McFarlane or Ed Larson or Rob Liefeld talk about Marvel, you fucking hate them. And you know, a lot of people in the 70s and 80s became millionaires. Like John Byrne famously became a millionaire because of Alpha Flight and X-Men and Fantastic Four. And still somehow really hates Jim Shooter at the same time, which is interesting. I still can't quite figure that one out. But I mean, these guys were rock stars, and by the time Liefeld and McFarlane came along, they were the last guys that were those kind of rock stars. Probably, you know, when people talk now about, I can't. It's like when they're saying, "Oh, you know, this is the golden age for comic art and the golden age for stories." And I know I sound like an old man when I say this, but clearly, people when they're saying that, they've never picked up a fucking anything like Rip Kirby, like drawn by Alex Raymond in his prime, or fucking Steve Canyon by Milt Caniff, or fucking Prince Valiant by Hal Foster, or any of the horror comics done by Alex Toth, or I mean, if you pick up a Ditko comic from before he went really, really fucking right wing, like early Spider-Mans, right through to I would say, like, I've still got the speed. Yeah, that's me. I've got the Speedball comics from the 80s that he did with Butch Guice and Roger Stern. The energy in there and the wackiness is just, you just don't fucking get anything else. It's like reading watching Into the Spider-Verse. It's just, what the fuck is this? Or in 2000 AD did that as well. I think I don't know if it's on purpose, but there's a punkish quality to Ditko, and there's a punk or that kind of, that off-centerness is definitely there in something like 2000 AD or Into the Spider-Verse or something like that. It's a commonality for me.
Always made it on purpose, I think, though. I think the fact that obviously they formed the first issues were coming together around about the same time that sort of the first wave of punk rock was coming out in punk rock. I sound like a thinking hippie just saying that. It was just punk, full stop. You know, you're the summer that 2000 ADs were were being printed was the same summer that the Pistols and the Clash and the Buzzcocks and that were all to book out places, X-ray specs and stuff, you know. So I think 2000 AD have been very clever to recognise that, and not obviously when I think when as the process and time's gone on, they could have matured the image slightly to and grow it, but they have kept that kind of the rock and roll element of it, and the sort of the brash. Well, I would anyway, and I'm probably missing it, but that kind of brash kind of the anthology, everything kind of coming together at total different speeds and stuff. It's like the pacing of it now is incredible, because you're like, whoa.
So the thing that I always think about is quite interesting is it gets very difficult to trace influences, because I mean 2000 AD. God, I'm trying to remember. Maybe from reading Pat Mills' book or one of David Bishop's or something like that. Came from basically, Star Wars was in the big hits. Was it Kelvin Bishop or something like that? Said we should capitalise on that. But definitely the art with someone like Mike McMahon has that real punkish vibe, because art schools, I think at that time, like a lot of folk that went to British art schools, they didn't actually become artists; they became musicians. Like actually, Mick Jagger went to London School of Economics, but David Bowie had been to art school. Brian Ferry, I think Brian Eno as well. I don't know about Morrissey, but certainly that kind of art school aesthetic and that kind of punk vibe was coming out of that. And I think though, like Britain, and again from growing up in the 70s, Britain was always seemed to be a few years behind America, in the New York scene. And what's quite interesting to me is that a lot of the guys in America that were kind of forming punk bands and stuff grew up reading comics. So a lot of the American comics are reflected through punk, and then that punk is reflected through British comics. So I wonder sometimes, because it's quite funny, like British comic artists and stuff like that. Like I've got the Masters of British Comic Art, the David Roach book. It's quite interesting seeing some artists, like he has got a really strong American influence in his art. Where does that come from? Because from what I know of British comics, there isn't a huge amount. is that, you know, there's that strong kind of illustrative, like kind of golden age of comics, and it came less from magazines but more from illustrated books and stuff like that. It seems to be in Britain, you know, and classically taught artists as well, rather than New York, where there was a much stronger tie-in with, you know, kind of Madison Avenue and advertising and magazines and stuff like that. It just seems to be different. But the kind of cross kind of pollination of music in comics, I think, is really important, and I think that's something certainly you still had a little bit of when I discovered comic shops in Glasgow. Like, you had Virgin Megastore in Union Street, which had a comic shop in it and a fucking skateboard shop in it, stuff like that. And what's quite interesting now is seeing the modern comic shop now. It's, you know, it's predominantly toys, or kind of fucking statues and collectible stuff and kind of paraphernalia and stuff, and then you have these science fiction books, but there's no music. And I find that really, really interesting because, again, if you start reading about underground comics and stuff in America, it was very much in head shops. You know, and someone like Jim Stewart, who draws Ganja Man, again, he's the only guy I know in the kind of, I mean, he's not a small practice, he makes a living, he is a professional comic artist, in the kind of indie comic scene I know, that still has that very much that kind of maybe Robert Crumb career. I mean, his is a career. I mean, I don't have a career in comics and all like that, but he does have that. He's the only guy I know like that kind of thing. So that kind of that kind of model. The rest of us, it is very much that kind of do it yourself, make it at home. You know, and some people obviously are improving their craft at a faster rate than others, which is totally normal, kind of thing, depending on folks' backgrounds and stuff. And the thing I've noticed that really interests me is that people's ability in craft doesn't seem to relate to whether they went to art school or not, or whether they've got formal training. Because the people I see now who are younger, they've very much got that digital disposition or that digital process. And there's sometimes, not always, but sometimes, a kind of standardised look to that as well. It's very much in the cartoony side. The illustrative side of things seems to be in the British small press stuff or the British indie stuff I've seen. It's not there as much. Now, that might just be changing trends across comics and stuff, but I don't know. I find that really interesting that kind of cartoony look and the kind of, and the same things there in the writing as well. A lot of biographical comics, a lot of horror comics. And the thing about the United for me is it's odd is that I've only ever really seen a handful of superhero indie comics. And then again, British comics, it's never really, apart from Marvel UK, there's never really been a big superhero scene in British comics. So,
I think the cartoony look you're talking about is probably Japanese influence.
Yeah,
because anime is just massive, you know, amongst teenagers at the, you know, and even younger. And I think that's what's influenced it most. And most of the younger indie comic creators that I know are massive fans of that. Whereas I'm not.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of crept into kind of Western pop culture as well. Like things like
even
Steve
like The Mandalorian
or something like that. Yeah. I suppose I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, the Mandalorian's a Western, but yeah, there is kind of that.
Yeah, but it's got those Kurosawa kind of samurai stuff going on there.
Yeah, but that was always in there from the spaghetti westerns and stuff as well, though, with Leone and Kurosawa.
Magnificent Sevens. The Magnificent Sevens just a remake of Seven Samurai, isn't it?
Yeah, and The Good, the Bad. A Fistful of Dollars is a remake of. Oh God, what's it called? It's a Kurosawa film.
Yeah,
it's a remake as well. Like kind of thing.
I'm annoyed. I watched a documentary about Sergio Leone the other day, and I should probably have been able to have fired that off for you. I apologise.
I'd love The Good, the Bad, and Ugly, and For a Few Dollars More and A Fistful of Dollars. It's they're films I'll kind of watch every so often, and I've never really thought about it. There's a couple of things I always really, really fancy drawing. I'd love to draw a Western. I was saying this to James last night or the night before. We were talking about Transylvanian Nights. I'm starting to draw it again. I was saying like that the second issue, the characters, there really is a Western feel to it, and that's because when I was kind of researching it just to draw it and stuff like that, because I was like, well, what the fuck's a Romanian castle look like then? You know, what's the architecture like? You know, and then the fashion of the times. It's you know, the time of Dracula. It's Victorian times. It's not kind of medieval stuff. It's not, you know. So these guys, you know, they're not just carrying swords; they carry guns. You know what I mean? They've got rifles and stuff like that. It's not like fucking muskets and stuff like that. It's revolvers and stuff like that. So I find that quite interesting because I think the difference between something like Transylvania Nights and Dracula, the book is that there's obviously a kind of an urban or town element to Dracula. I'm trying to remember it now, but that's one thing I really wanted to draw at some point was like there's obviously a lot of ruined castles and Transylvanian Nights, but I really wanted to draw the cities as well because then you can bring in that noirish element as well. So that's one of the things I really love drawing in the United is those kind of urban settings and trying to make the place a bit of a character as well and trying rather than those fucking generic backgrounds. I know you used to read the X-Men comics, like I remember getting the Mark Silvestri run in X-Men, and you'd fucking read Chris Clement butchering a Scottish accent, you'd be like, what? what are these people trying to say? But then you see Edinburgh and you're like, what? Where is that?
Yes, it's middle America.
It's a fucking city. It's not like some...
It's very clear in your book, the differences between Glasgow, you've got London in there, and a few other odd places around the world that crop up. And you've obviously you've done your bit of research.
Yeah, Melville House is the first page in... Oh, no, it's not. Is it the first page? Yeah, Melville House is the first panel in the new stuff. Melville House, which is in Craigton Country Park. And that was only there because we one of our friends got a caravan there and we were staying in it.
Oh, right, of course. That's the scene in Fife, yeah, that's right.
Aye, so we were there.
I knew that place. I looked at it when I was reading it. I know that place and I couldn't think where it was, but now you've told me.
So the plot then one of the plot points I tied into the history of that building as well, and it's really kind of, because I'm really selling it now, the kind of history of the formation of the NHS as well, kind of tied into the United as well. It's like, well, it's just because it's just weird. It's like you had all these country estates that all of a sudden became hospitals. It's like, well, why did they become hospitals? What happened to the people that used to live there? And part of it was because people get rehoused in the Second World War, so the buildings were repurposed. But also a lot of God, really, I'm going to get sued. The Hamiltons. I don't know if you know about the Hamiltons. Right, so the Duke of Hamilton is the Lord Protector of Scotland. It's the highest civil position, apart from fucking Prince Charles, and Scottish kind of aristocracy. Yeah. So the Duke of Hamilton owned Hamilton Palace. And Hamilton, the town, was originally called Cadew, but it was renamed after the Hamiltons. And Hamilton Palace, it was the largest residence in Europe. I mean, see pictures, it's fucking enormous, but it pulled down because it was subsiding, apparently. And it had been a hospital, I think, after the First World War, or just before the First World War. And like Châtelet was still there and stuff, their old hunting lodge and stuff, and the mausoleum's still there and stuff. And it's enormous. They owned pretty much all of Lanarkshire and all the mines. But when you actually look at the history of it, they owned Kinneil Estate as well in Bowness. And they gave that to the local authority. They gave Hamilton Palace to the local authority. It was right after the stock market crash. They probably lost all their fucking money, or a lot of their money, and they had to get rid of it. And it's like, rather than, do you know what I mean? It's not the kindness of their heart. Oh, here, have it. It's like, here, fucking take this because we can't afford it. And you see the same thing. You see these ruined houses. They don't have the roofs on it anymore because they don't have to pay rates. They just can't, or half their house is taken over by Historic Scotland. They live in one of the wings. It's not like they're doing you a favour. It's just they've run out of money. They don't want to fucking pay for it. They want you to pay for it. So you know,
I'm astounded by the amount of research that goes into your books. Sometimes just a panel. Sorry, I'm going to have to go and plug in because I'm running out of power here. Keep getting warnings popping up. So bear with.
We have to ring it all anyway. We've talked to we had a Brendan Wright who's an artist and writer who does stuff in the 77. He talked about when we spoke to him. He talked about this weird thing that you do as a comic writer, or anyone that's working in comics, that you become like become an expert on quite random material.
Yeah.
I've got an upcoming plot point in one of the issues of my comic where I wanted to make it work with the sewage systems are like in Baghdad, because I want to be able to do something that I need to know that is possible, and I'm not just doing something totally random. But yeah, Baghdad compared to other Middle Eastern cities has got wrong in it.
Your sound's gone. It's gone really digit.
I can hear it fuzzy.
Yeah, you've gone a bit warbly.
Sorry, it's maybe just my voice.
Alec, yeah. That Tom Baker chat. That wire, he's crossed the wires at long last. That's what's happened.
Okay. Now that Colin's got himself plugged in, I'm actually, I think it's probably about time we bring this to close, because we're on the beer.
Did I actually answer any of your questions?
We'll get back to you.
I need to look at my questions and listen to the interview again and see if if that's the case.
Well, it doesn't matter. You entertained us for an hour and a half. So.
Oh no! Listen, I always like speaking with you, Colin. Always a good laugh. And it's nice to speak to you as well, Jeff. It's so weird. I don't know what it's like with your partners, but my wife, when we started seeing each other, she was really interested in comics. As soon as we get married, she just lost all interest. It's bored. God, look at fucking Alex Stroth. He's amazing. She's like, yeah, he's fucking great. Yeah, amazing. God, you're so boring. It's like my kids now as well. Like, kids, look at this, and they're like, Dad, we don't care. Like, just leave us alone. We're trying to watch a Spider-Man cartoon or something. I'm like, oh,
that sounds so familiar. Yeah,
it is strange how
my wife never cared, and that's just fair enough. You know.
Yeah, but at least you've had that honesty in your relationship from the start.
She's like, I'll start talking about something that's excited me, and she'll just be like, I'll stop you there. You know.
I watched every episode of Game of Thrones, even though I thought it was garbage, just because I love my wife. So, I'm trying to think. Although I remember reading she liked Watchmen, she really liked V for Vendetta. What else did she really like? She liked Fables as well. She was really into that. I really liked Fables until when Margaret Thatcher died, and he wrote this beaming eulogy for her. I was like, I'm not fucking reading your comics ever again. Which is why I made Margaret Thatcher a villainous old hag in the United.
Yeah.
So don't read the United if you're a staunch conservative. You're not going to like it. That's for sure. I
didn't realise you'd made her that way. I just thought that's how she was.
Yeah, that's based in a real life thing, because there's a scene in there with like one of the characters, Battalion, who's the original one's like a soldier, and he said, "Oh, we've had this threat from one of the villains, Malcolm McCaber. He's going to blow up a city if you don't agree to his demands." He said, "Well, what city is it he's going to blow up?" It's like Liverpool. She's like, "Just fucking let it burn then."
Yeah.
She did famously say that. I think it was after the IRA thing. It's like, well, why rebuild it? Who cares? Don't vote for us. It's like, you're a horrible person. You really are a lunatic. So yeah, you're right. I didn't have to make her a villain. She just was a villain. But there's always that worry. Like, you always sneak that in the copyright information. It's like, any resemblance to any character, any living any person dead or alive is purely coincidental, apart from the purpose of satire.
Yeah.
And it is true. You just. I mean, I don't know. It was quite funny. I mentioned earlier about when the Queen died in the United. My mate that was helping me do my website at the time refused to upload it. He asked me to do it because he was worried he was getting bought. I was like, who do you think's going to this website? Do you think MI5 is actually checking this out? Like, hey, look, your latest page of United's up. This guy's like a domestic terrorist or something. Look, the normal search system would work. It would have been explosions, Buckingham Palace, Queen, fucking poison dart frogs. It's like, what is this lunatic? It's the world's greatest assassin. No, he's just researching the corner. So why do you keep looking up Tour de France? It's so strange. This guy's search history is crazy. He's obsessed with cycling in France in the 1970s and 1980s. Really strange. Why is he looking this up? Why is he looking up French translations for both? It's really strange. Pictures of Melville House. He's going to blow up Scottish golf. But aye, I don't know. I was so blown away that when you see Melville House and stuff, and this beautiful big building, then you drive around the road and see this big purpose-built Scottish golf clubhouse and the Scottish golf headquarters, and it looks like a big shite new build, and you're like, just what's going on? And then that wee Dutch village.
Oh yes, the Dutch village on the lake. Yeah,
really strange. It's just, it is it's obviously a folly, but then the big Italian garden, you just think, where did these people get money from? And then you read a wee bit of history of the Melvilles, and it was about them fucking assassinating someone for King James. You know, like, bloody hell, this is brilliant. But you do a lot of historical stuff though for your.
I do, and I find out bizarre stuff like that as well.
Yeah, it is weird. So the thing is, it's families, and you've got a mixture in Scotland of families and I suppose overhauling the clan system, and you kind of see that still if you go out to the islands, you know, the kind of ancestral homes and stuff. But I don't know. Why are you doing something set in Baghdad, by the way? What made you?
We've lost you, Jeff. We can't hear you.
He's too emotionally invested in the Middle East.
Yeah, he clearly is.
I've been muted for about 5 minutes.
There you go.
I set it in Baghdad because I wanted to do something about my degree is in religious, moral, and philosophical studies, and did a lot of stuff about them. I did a lot of stuff about sort of Middle Eastern philosophy and Middle Eastern mysticism and stuff when I was at uni, and I just wanted to do something that was just a bit kind of out there. And
you wanted to do something with his degree.
Yeah, but no, I wanted to play around with sort of different narratives and that. And one of the things that if you look at one of the protagonists in my series is an Iraqi woman, and if you look at sort of there's a horrible, I don't know, maybe too tired and a bit too tipsy to try and make this argument, but there's this horrible thing that like women, because of sort of cultural and religious and historical and even just sort of contemporary reasons, women in Iraq are. I found a poll somewhere of like the countries that respect. I can't remember what the poll was, but it was like countries that respect women ranked from like in every country in the world, like, you know, and they measured the rights of women using different kind of social indicators about like income and jobs and access to services and things like that. And Iraq's like the second worst in the world, and I know that, you know, there's been heavy Western military presence in the area for the last 3 decades. It hasn't changed. You know, women in Iraq are still the most marginalised human beings on the planet, so I wanted to. They are human beings, and when you measure the capability of humanity, there's not, you know, the women of Iraq are as capable human beings to achieve greatness as any other human being in the world. You know, there's nothing but opportunity and pressure from all these outside factors are stopping women in Iraq from contributing to global society in the same way women and men from other areas of the world can. So I really want to make a really strong story where one of the main protagonists in this sort of international like superhero-y like epic, I want one of the main protagonists and the heroes of the story to be an Iraqi woman, because I think for me that's quite important, that, you know, we reflect on humanity and realise that, you know, given a level playing field and given equity and equality, we can all achieve greatness. But we've got some horrific consequences that are being bestowed upon members of our global society that stops them from achieving their potential, and that's really wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at most great people, at some point in their formative years, they've had to overcome some kind of barrier or some kind of obstacle, whether it's class or oppression, like racial oppression or gender oppression, or religious oppression, whatever it is. That's a common theme. I mean, I don't mean to be flippant comparing like an athlete to, you know, someone that's grown up in you know, quite horrific oppression and really extreme patriarchies, but someone like God, I'm just trying to think of somebody who actually fucking heard of. It's quite difficult. But also something that's not really a kind of really shallow current celebrity era, like footballer or athlete. But yeah, someone like Ronaldo, like Brazilian Ronaldo, you know, he goes on to be one of the greatest players ever, but grows up in extreme poverty, and that's what leads his body to break down in his career, because it's like having the engine of a Ferrari and the chassis of a Lada. It's going to fall to bits because he grew up malnourished until he started, you know, playing for professional clubs. And it's similar for someone like Joe Frazier. I don't know if your listeners will heard him. A really, really famous heavyweight boxer from the 1970s who grew up in poverty, or George Foreman or Marvin Hagler, or any number of guys like that. I mean, boxing actually really reminds me of comics. It's very, very similar in some ways, and it's, you know, something that was a mass market product which has become a niche market product because of the mode of distribution. In boxing's case, pay-per-view. In comics' case, the direct market. But also the background of the people who are the makers of the products, the boxers, that's always tied to the history of deprivation. So you can see that almost in the heavyweight circle, like in the heavyweight division, a lot of Eastern European boxers and British boxers beginning to dominate, whereas previously it was Black American boxers. But their opportunities have become greater because barriers have been taken away in baseball and American football, so they don't need to become heavyweight boxers anymore. So the risk-reward ratio is different. That's not the case in other countries, including ours. So, because, you know, if you're built like a heavyweight boxer in the UK, it's very unlikely that you can pursue a career in football because footballers are so fucking small. You know, Anthony Josh is not going to play for Chelsea, even though he is a world-class athlete, because he's just too fucking big. He might not be good at football either, I don't know. He's pretty good at punching people in the face, so that's quite handy. So, there's things like that, and that kind of common factor as well of, you know, someone like great leaders, you know, like whether it's Martin Luther King or, you know, someone more recent like Barack Obama. There's usually something in their formative years, whether it's, you know, the absence of a parent or experiencing racism or something that makes them the person they are. You know, it's the hard times, you know. So, I mean, you're writing a comic about a setting which creates that. I mean, it's terrible, but you know, the people that break through those structures and those systems and those limitations have to be special. What I find quite interesting is that, I don't know if you've had this before, and I had a little bit in United, where you can think about it too much as you're writing it, or you're drawing it, or when you're making it, and you lose sight of telling a good story because it becomes about a message, and you want a clarity of message. You don't want people to misread the part of yourself that you're putting into it, whether it's your politics or whether it's your religious beliefs, or whether it's, you know, talking about your sexuality or however you're expressing yourself. And that's something I'd pulled back from, because I was like, I think it can be very easy to get confused, because, I mean, I used to be a lecturer, so I wouldn't teach people what to think. I wouldn't like layer my politics or philosophies onto them. I would try and help them how to form their own ideas and give counterpoints and different perspectives and stuff on it. You can't do that in a comic. You know, you can, but you can't really, because it can bog it down, because no one wants to get fucking hit over the head, you know, with an academic textbook when they're reading fucking. And I always find it quite funny when people talk about X-Men like they're reading one of the great works of literature, and you know, oh, this is amazing, all these themes in here. It's like it's a story about a guy firing lasers out his face. It's really not, you know, and it's really entertaining, and I love it. But at the same time, you're layering in your own personal experiences on top of this. That's not what they were thinking about when they came up with this comic. You know, they're not mutants as a representation of racial politics in the 1960s or sexual politics in the 1980s, the 1990s, or 2000s. It's because they literally couldn't come up with an idea for their origins. Well, they're just born that way. I mean, they said that. I mean, that's where it came from. So, you know, they stuck to it over the years. So, I don't know. That's something.
I always thought that. But I don't know. I always thought, like, you know, like it wasn't on the. It wasn't. You're right. It wasn't on the nose. It wasn't like this is about civil rights. This is about health issues. But it was there was that implication that was in there. I always assumed that's why the X-Men was so. I read Grant Morrison he wrote Superhuman. I don't know if you've ever read that.
Yeah, Super Gods. Yeah,
Super Gods. Sorry, but I don't know. That's probably my main reference for this argument. But I always assumed that the X-Men in particular were an attempt to try and have a discussion. Whether it wasn't on the nose. It wasn't like this is a civil rights comic, but you know they never shied away from the fact that there was certain implications within the text.
I think that's something that maybe Claremont did it later on when he started to maybe read his own press. I absolutely don't think it's there. That's not what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby intended. I think it's very obvious because the original X-Men are all white, and the women in the group is incredibly tokenistic, and I think Stan Lee. I mean, all you need to do is read a Fantastic Four comic and see the way Reed Richards regularly treats Susan Storm. The gender politics are they're not exactly enlightened. Christ Almighty, no, not at all. And certainly that's the case for, you know, I suppose when Chris Claremont came on and wrote the X-Men stuff and the female character, I kind of. I mean, again, I love that stuff. I love that Dark Phoenix run. I think it's the best, some of the best comics I've ever read. I mean, they're stunning, but at the same time, there's a lot of problematic stuff in there. I never picked up on all this S&M when I was a kid. There's a lot of people. So he brainwashes her to become his dominatrix figure. This is very disturbing. So she's 13 years old. Oh. And this muscle-bound guy's 18 or 20, and what's happening there? There's a lot of stuff in there, and you're like, this, you know, it's not that it's not aged well. It's just, you know, I remember as a kid thinking this doesn't seem quite right. Yeah, it's you know, it's like when you watch. Colin, I know you like to watch Stan Boardman a lot in your spare time.
Yeah. Huge fan of that.
Bernard Manning, because they're so funny.
Oh, yes.
People say now, you know, that was acceptable then. It wasn't acceptable then. Don't try and it wasn't acceptable then. It wasn't funny then either. A lot of people did find it offensive. It's like Songs of the South, the Disney film that they've kind of airbrushed from history, you know. It was racist at the time. You know, it's just more widely recognised as racist now. A lot of people were deeply hurt and deeply offended by it then. You know, it's just... And this is something which is happening obviously very much in American politics in a very high profile way, and it's certainly something that's happening in British politics just now because we've got a overtly racist Prime Minister. You know, it's just, I don't know, I find it really interesting after the matter. People reread these comics and then they get something out and it's like, oh look, they meant this as this. They were just writing fucking anything because they couldn't there was no thought going into it. It's by the seat of their pants. They're doing exactly. I mean, the way that I work is the Marvel method, except it's just me that's doing it. You know, and I'm not jumping on a desk and acting it out for myself, and also I'm not stealing credit from myself either. And you know, it's. I think the way you make comics and what you put into your comics should be exactly what you want to get out of it for you personally. And I think the same applies when you're reading it as well. You know, whether you focus on it as an art form or as a literary form, or whether you're looking for the hidden meaning in it. And the reality is I'm sure someone has come up to you and said to you about your comics at some point, I really like what you did there when you had that in there, and you've been thinking, what the fuck are they talking about? I have no idea what you're you know, and it's like, yeah, that was like, you know, you need to be honest about it. Or
it was a clever nod to something.
Did I mean to do that? Did I just do that? Why is that come out?
There's a discussion in there about interpretation as well. One of the random things that's come out of my issue one that I've got is there's a joke which I didn't intend to be anything more than just a throwaway gag in issue one about how all this weird stuff's going on, and the one of the characters is just like, yeah, this is just Raiders of the Lost Ark, isn't it? Like, you know, and because he's in Iraq and he's surrounded by folk who don't have access to Western media, they have no idea what he's talking about. And one of the lines is like, has anyone, you know, do you think these guys have seen Raiders? Have you seen Raiders? Has anyone seen Raiders? And I've had folk email me saying like, I'm looking forward to issue 2. Oh, by the way, I've seen Raiders. It's like, oh, that's cool that's become one of the. That's cool that's what was a throwaway gag is something that people are like, to the point that I've actually written it into issue 2. There's a reference.
And I'm doing the cover for it as well, and well, no spoilers, but there's a Raiders reference.
Yeah,
but it's Raiders crisps. It's not Raiders the film.
Aye, that's right, Raiders crisps. Yeah, nobody's gotten down to
the world's worst crisps.
Yeah, it's a Piccadilly crisp joke. No one else gets.
Yeah, it's like, I don't understand this with Space Invaders, but it's crisps. I don't understand. And so I did that in an issue of the United earlier on. I can't even remember that. I fucking probably just drew it. They found this thing, like it's all these super villains and they're plugged into batteries. And then when I went to script it, it's like, I thought, this is an obvious rip-off of The Matrix. And so that's what they say. They said, God, this is a bit like The Matrix, isn't it? And it's like, yes, it really is. You've obviously I've not meant to. It's just, you know. And again, it's a bit like, you know, when we were talking earlier on about, you know, like the influence of punk and stuff, and, you know, did comics influence punk, and then did punk influence comics, and then did comics influence different types of music influence comics, and so on and round and round. It's just, you just don't know where it's coming from. I've certainly done that drawing comics where I'll draw a panel, and then I don't know, like about 2 months later or a year later, I'll be reading something like, fucking hell, that's almost exactly the same composition. And it's an old comic, and I must have read it at some point, and it's been in my head. And, you know, and I think that's fairly common. There's a cover, the original cover to issue 3 of the United, the close-up of Big Cat and punching Gentleman in the face. And I drew that actual size. No, I drew that A4. Normally I draw A3 and then would get down to A5. And so go 2 down rather than 1 down. And I remember drawing it at times, just drew it drew my basic construction, drew it, that was it. And then I saw a cover of Wolverine by John Byrne, and it's exactly the same shot. And I don't ever remember seeing it before. I'm a big fan of John Byrne. I didn't get that run. And I can't remember seeing it. And then I saw something else that's quite similar to it as well. But you see that a lot. Like there's a panel in the new stuff where one of the characters gets punched, and I was looking at it and I was like, I've seen that before. I must have had that in my head when I was doing my kind of layouts. And then I went and looked in how to draw comics the Marvel way, and I was like, oh, fuck, there it is there. But then I was reading, or rather I was looking at John Byrne's new stuff, that X-Men Elsewhere thing he's doing on Facebook. He had exactly the same pose in there. And that's what happens, is like you either do it consciously because you're stuck, and it's like, fuck, it's like the Wallywood 22 panels that always work. I need to get this page done. Right, fucking, how am I going to draw from this angle? I'll look at my favourite artists, see how they draw from that angle, and you'll I know everyone goes, oh my God, you're swiping a competition. That's how it works. If you either observe something from life or you observe something from other artists, your favourite artists, and you figure out how to draw it from life, or you figure out how your favourite artist drew it, you reverse engineer it, or you can just fucking be Greg Land and fucking steal it, which isn't great, and it's, you know what I mean, it's not. You shouldn't do that. It's not right. It's like Roy Lichtenstein though. Roy Lichtenstein. Most people, he's a fucking amazing artist. Well, what about fucking Werner Ross or Kirby or whoever else he fucking ripped off, stole their work? Do you know what I mean? It's this is nothing new. I mean, you know, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right, but I don't know. That's something you can either choose to do, or that's something that is just going to happen. And whether it's story ideas where, you know, I'm pretty sure all three of us have. Well, I'll say writing for me in inverted commas. But when you're coming up with an idea, it's probably come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is you've read thousands of comics, and that's all in your head swirling about, and it's going to come out at some time, you know, whether you mean it to or not. It's definitely going to come out if you're involved in the visual side of comics, because there's only so many different ways you can draw something. It'll either come out in your style, but it'll be the same composition. And again, you'll either choose to do that, or it's just going to happen. And certainly there's been instances where I've chose to do it because that's how I've learned to do it. I mean, there are certain angles I will purposely choose to draw from because I cannot do it, and that's how I'll get better. It's by learning to draw that way. Now, a good example, the best example I can think of is, I'll do this for anyone that's watching this, is the Gil Kane up nose shot. I love Gil Kane because he's a great artist. I hate the way he draws those fucking pig noses. They're like cubist pig noses. I actually find it upsetting. There's something really disturbing about it. I think it's because you can see so much of his construction of the face in it. It is almost cubist, I think, the way he does it. And I don't like cubism. It freaks me out. I have nightmares about it. I think it's because I took acid when I was 18 and had a kind of bit of a flake out, and it was... it's just... I'm not a fan of it. I find it ugly. So I would look at for that kind of thing. And I don't like the way Steve McNiven does it either, because I think he's based his in Gil Kane, his approach. I hate those shots. So when I do it, I'll look at other artists that maybe have a bit of a softer line, whether it's Alan Davis or an Alex Toth or someone with a clean line, and where the construction's not so boxy. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Similarly, like there's that thing you do when you're drawing the chin from underneath. You'll draw that kind of upside down U shape, or an N, as some people call it. I just forgot the alphabet there for a second. You can do that, or you can do the jawline like that. And do you know what I mean? It's like there's certain cheats when you're drawing. You're not drawing it literally. You're kind of you know, it's the interpretive side of it.
We've talked about possibly having a series of podcasts about the kind of process of making comics, and you know, I think you'd be great to come onto that and tell us about some of the stuff
jobbies
that you've learned. Talk about jobbies.
See how you can draw a really good jobbie. It's like an upside down W or an M.
Sometime in the future, we'll get you back on and get some other writers. And
I'll still be in here talking to no one.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up anyway because we've been on 2 hours now. That's awesome.
No, because it's actually Saturday. That's why.
It is. Yeah.
Right.
Next, I've got to go to church.
Yeah, totally. I'm off. I've got work in like 20 minutes.
Are you going for your run again as well? Because we know you like to run at night by your neighbour's wife's house when he just happens to be at work. So,
but hey, Johnny, it's been a total pleasure. It's been amazing, great stories, and we'll as soon as your Kickstarter's out, we'll punt it out on our social media and let people know.
Yeah, sure thing. And next time we speak, I'll try and remember why I asked Adam Falk to color the cover.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just ask Adam. He'll probably know.
He'll probably answer a lot quicker than I would as well.
All right.
I had a great time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. It's been a great chat. stop recording.
Oh, are we going as
sorry.
well?
Oh, sorry.
Right, we would normally chat a wee bit, but we're running out of time because we've never done 2 hours 10 before. Have we got a guest for next? We've got a couple of people I think lined up for the next couple of weeks. So
I think we'll have guests. Yeah, we've got a volunteer for next week.
So there, as a rule, they now have to all go and watch this podcast back and start coming up with really random stories because Johnny's going to win the random story awards at the end of the year.
Sure.
Yeah. It was amazing to have Johnny on, and please check out. I'll put up his banner again just now. Please, I always go on Twitter when I'm looking for handles and where you can find folk. Please check out at Cannon Hill Comic on Twitter. I think that's a good place to go because also that's where I got the link for the big cartel page that Johnny's got, which has got all his United stuff, and it's real. It's amazing comics, but it's also like I bought the first 3 issues for a couple of quid, so it's absolutely amazing. If you like what Johnny's been saying, that'd be
and the Kickstarter comic's going to be like about 200 pages.
I know, it's
going to be a big story, so you got a lot for your money.
Awesome. We're going to shoot off as well, then, man.
I think so.
Okay.
We'll do Beyond Comics another time.
Colin, for your Commando Comics.
Cheers.
Absolutely incredible, man. And we'll speak to everyone soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.